Hello, everyone. You all win the awards, I think, for staying for the afternoon. And we are delighted to be here, of course, with you, continuing the conversation. And I'm really actually honored and excited to interview Jim. Our prep calls and conversations have been so wonderful. So keeping this to our time frame is our goal right now. So I guess I'll start with, as we all know from yesterday and today, particularly yesterday, our conversations were largely about change and how can we catalyze change and some of the frustrations that people are feeling about change moving too slowly. And if you were at my session yesterday, we spoke about the investor voice and talking with corporations about their sustainability measures. And so this is something that I do frequently, and not on stage like this. We usually do it on a Zoom screen with our staff and their staff. So this will be more of an open conversation, and we're not making any requests or demands. It's more, how can you share some of the highlights about what you're doing inside? And I'd love to get to some of the issues as far as what do you see catalyzes change from the inside? And I'll let you start with that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Kristin. And first off, I generally never share that I worked for a boy band until I've had a few beers, but it seemed to slip out backstage. But yeah, I don't know if that's good for my cred or bad for my cred. But so, anyway, yeah, so this has been such a fantastic conference for me because generally I'm speaking to other corporate sustainability folks, and to have the diversity of this audience has been fantastic, and just it's been a real learning experience for me as well, talking to the investment community and other activists in that space. And as we talk about regeneration, we talk about rethinking capitalism, we talk about all these changes that are necessary in the world, and the pace of change that's really necessary. One of the key takeaways I hope you all remember is that we still live in an existing world where there's large corporations doing a lot of things. And as we work to accelerate this regeneration and rethinking and redoing the way capitalism works, or even rediscussing capitalism, we still need to focus on the inside. And my whole focus of change from within these companies that you mentioned I've worked for in the past has really been about, how do I get more resources, more headcount, more dollars to actually fund these imperative sustainability programs that we're trying to do internally? And a couple of folks talked about it yesterday, but internal traction is one of the greatest challenges that sustainability professionals have within the corporate sector, is how to actually get across the line and get resources for what I'm trying to accomplish. And for me, we've always lived in this space in corporate sustainability where we rely on these anecdotal and qualitative reasons to try to prove the case for why we want to make these investments. And we only get so far with those. And I've really been focused in my career over the last 10, 15 years on how to actually link proposed investments in sustainability, carbon reduction, whatever it happens to be, directly back to business metrics and directly back to P&L for the company. And again, people can question whether or not that's the best approach to take, I think, from a purities perspective toward the movement itself. But I'm really all about making change very quickly, how we can actually scale up that change. And I got to tell you, when I am able to link my proposed investments in sustainability for a company directly back to the business leader's P&L, I get way more zeros on my budget, and I get way more headcount to do it. So these questions I always ask leaders when I'm trying to pitch internal programs is, it's interesting, is I'll go to a leader and say, tell me what keeps you up at night and tell me how you're bonused. And then go back and do the hard work necessary to link a carbon reduction strategy or an energy strategy or a water strategy back to that person's direct metrics, so then they become an internal champion for that work. And companies that are good at that, are really able to accelerate the pace of change, accelerate the amount of resources. But also, I think we've talked a lot about backlash that's happening in the industry right now against ESG. And if you're able to drive those business cases for ESG investment, social investment, environmental investment, it really gives us the opportunity to have a defensive shield against those anti-ESG movements. So we can say, no, we're going to keep investing in this because we've already demonstrated it's fantastic for our business and profitability.
Exactly. So just let's have a shout out for Jim, because this is so fantastic that we have a voice that is driving change from within. And as we spoke about yesterday, tying things to the business case is so important. And I hadn't thought that you would come out with the outward because you're doing so much on the inward. And yet, of course, to be able to say to stakeholders, all of your different stakeholders, that there is specifically a business case. And can you give us some examples about projects you've worked on there?
Yeah, so when I recently worked on Microsoft is in the circular economy space. And if you're familiar with the data centers, and I oversee data center sustainability, is we buy a whole lot of servers and spend a whole lot of money buying those servers. It's billions of dollars per year doing it, and because we run them so hard, the lifespan of those servers is generally not very long. So we buy them, we burn them up, and then we send them off for recycling. And I really, as an advocate for circular economy, was trying to come up with ways that the company could really advocate for a refurbishment, reuse, and upgrade model for our servers versus just buy new ones and send the old ones out the door. And when I was internally making the business case and pitching that to these leaders within the business, at the time, we were really facing a supply chain bottleneck in servers because of the expansive and explosive growth of cloud infrastructure. Everyone was competing with the same suppliers for these servers, and I knew that was going to be a potential bottleneck on our growth in the data center space. And so, as I was selling this, and we were selling it, as I was selling it internally to these business leaders, I said, "This is a great way to help us alleviate and mitigate the server supply chain bottleneck that we're potentially facing." And then they became champions, and I never had to use the word sustainability, circular economy, which you have to explain, to most people in the world, or any other aspect like that. I just sold it on this is a business driver for the company. It also was going to create a bunch of local jobs in the communities that host our data centers. And if you're familiar with the data center motif, certainly license to operate is critical for our continued success. And we're facing significant headwinds to our license to operate in many communities. So anytime you can do something for the community like job creation, it helps in that space as well. Oh, and it's going to save a couple $2 billion for the company on top of that as well. So that's what got it off the ground. It became a no-brainer for the company with a really good ROI. And now we're approaching 90% of the servers that we, are at their end of life, go back into the system through reuse, refurbishment, and upgrade versus, like I said, sending them out the door as we previously did.
Right, so that's a fantastic example. And as an investor, we love, applause for that. Thank you. Absolutely. So creative thinking, and of course, bringing in the concepts of circular economy is what we want to see. And then, of course, as an investor, we then get to see that you are taking things literally into your own hands and putting them into the hands of the community, right? And so then when we're looking at where the emissions are coming from, we have a clearer sense as an investor. So that, hits lots of boxes for us, and love to see just the ingenuity, because we also want to see that our companies continue to innovate. So both on products and services, and then how business models, and of course pipelines. And we all saw this, 2020 and beyond. What does it mean to really know your supply chain and then to bring it in-house and have it be circular?
Yeah, and I think as an investor for yourself, that we're able to demonstrate a level of sophistication in the space where you often see a lot of platitudes toward sustainability or ESG, whatever it happens to be. But it's really an inch deep and a mile wide when you actually dig into those companies. But if you can demonstrate these type of case studies that businesses have really thought about these issues, have tied it back to their P&L, tied it back to their profitability, and can accelerate their decarbonization or community investment or whatever it happens to be, certainly we're hopefully more of a target for you in the investment community to invest in, because you can see that level of sophistication that we put into that space, so we can meet your social mission and your environmental mission while also, I think, driving returns for your investors.
Well, exactly. And so we want to see that the impact is actually coming from the very revenue source, right. So where you can show that, we line up really well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I could go on with lots of questions. I want to give you an opportunity to maybe share another example or something that you're excited about in this space.
So I have a lot of fun examples. I previously worked at Yellowstone National Park, and if you've been in that park, one of the big issues was those little 1-pound disposable cylinders, propane cylinders, and they were a huge issue for us because most people enter Yellowstone in one entrance and go out the other entrance and then hop into an airplane. So there's really nothing to do with those cylinders. And what we saw was, sure, it was an environmental issue, an environmental concern for us from a waste management perspective, but it's also a safety issue for the park who was processing the waste. And a couple of these little cylinders actually exploded during a waste processing situation. And so I got with a couple of mechanical engineers, and said, you need to build a solution for us here. And these were oil and gas engineers out of Billings, Montana, who were just looking for something fun to do. And we actually built this mobile propane bottle recycler for Yellowstone National Park that would extract the propane, crush the cylinders, make scrap metal out of them. And again, I sold this as a safety issue, but I also guilted the heck out of REI to pay for this whole thing because they were the ones who were generating most of those waste streams. So yeah, it was another way where we were able to use other metrics in addition to sustainability to justify the investments and justify the momentum associated with that. And same thing with a lot of work at Starbucks as well. But yeah, but I think
so. Just on the cylinders, I'm guessing you went down this road. Those cannot be reused. No. So that means right.
I mean, you can refill them, but you shouldn't. But the cool thing about this is these two gentlemen were able to patent this product and then start selling it to parks all over the country. And they built a business model out of it as well, just from a good catalyst from a real world problem we were facing. Yeah.
Fantastic. So this is at all national parks now?
And not all of them, but most of them have it now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, the future really is, it's a combination of all the things we've been talking about over the last 2 days. I mean, it's a combination of activist investors. I always joke that sustainability professionals' best friend, or corporate sustainability professionals' best friend, are activist investors who, poke and prod and come after the companies a bit, because that enables us to create a lot of internal momentum where sometimes we often struggle to get that internal traction. So external sources of challenges to the company are certainly, something we secretly like as professionals in the space. So keep that up. But do it in a way that you understand that the nature of business is really to develop products, serve customers, make money for their investors, make money for the shareholders as well. And if you bring that context to whatever role you have as an activist investor or a shareholder resolution type person or whatever it happens to be, if you understand that concept and really can align around that, then you can become more of a partner than an adversary, and having an adversarial relationship with these people. And you were talking about As You Sow backstage a bit, and I worked with them all the time at Starbucks, and they were perfect, because they were great technical resources, they were educated, they prodded the heck out of us to make some changes. For them, it was around our ubiquitous coffee cups at the time. Right. And it gave me a lot of internal momentum to get the investments, to make the changes to Starbucks coffee cups, to make them more recyclable in that space, which we certainly would have struggled to get that type of momentum had it not been for shareholder resolutions, for advocates, for right. An occasional negative newspaper article, that really brought attention to leadership.
Yeah, so you bring up such an interesting point, and we are running out of time, though. I will say that, and I said this yesterday, all of our investor voices do count. They Absolutely. Do matter. And for us, we want to be seen as the win-win, not the adversary, but really the one that we're really on the same page, and that this is going to be better for the business model. It's, of course, going to be better for the branding, and then, of course, for the bottom line as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks?
Yeah, partnership is critical here. And, I think understanding that if you treat a person or an entity as an adversary from day one, then your ability to create partnerships is diminished significantly. But if you understand and put yourself in their shoes, whatever shoes they happen to be, understand what really drives them, what drives their success, what they're passionate about and the like, then we can really accelerate those partnerships in a meaningful way. And I would invite, folks, as you think about corporations, don't paint us all in the same sort of broad brush. There's a significant difference among the corporate sectors out there. Find the ones you can partnership, and we're all trying to accelerate everything together. So again, I've been completely excited about the last 2 days here because this is not my typical audience, and it's been fantastic to hear this perspective.
Yeah, really great closing words. So building community, that's what we're doing here, stepping into someone else's shoes with empathy to really understand where they're coming from and building those bridges so we can solve these problems together. I think those are some great takeaways.
Cool.
Thanks, you all.
Thanks, Kristin.
Okay.